You can go ahead of mine.
We're just gonna test your mic and your video before we go live here.
Okay, perfect. Does that work?
I can hear you. You can see you.
Excellent. I can hear and see all of you.
Your sound is a little choppy.
Oh.
Are we coming in clear for you?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Just say and spell your name forward and backwards, and that way we have a continuous. Just testing you, Lauren. I was just curious if you're doing it.
Do I have to do it while I'm touching my nose or patting my head or something?
Well, I got you to talk more there, so there is a quality issue on the video, so.
Okay. I'm just trying to that. Oh, I can hear myself echoing.
Maybe turn your video off and let's try that. Sometimes it helps.
Sure.
All right, let's see. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Hello.
No difference. Maybe log out and log back in.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, we'll give you a couple of minutes here.
Annoying more than anything. I'm just negotiating.
Should I?
Lauren, do you want to try again?
Water, because then it will rain for sure.
That's true, that's very true, I will do that,
If you don't water, it won't rain.
that's so true.
Can you hear me, Lauren?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can, but you're still choppy.
I'm gonna shut people off.
Yeah. Do you have a set of
There's
headphones
one
you
that comes
can
with
try?
your phone. Okay.
You think it might be your
Pardon?
computer mic?
I think the speaker's picking up.
I'm using my headphones.
You're using your headphones? Okay.
Right, you have this 90 millimeters also.
Yeah. Do you have a strong internet connection?
I do. I tested it this morning with Ryan to make sure.
If it says it's going to rain at 3, it will. Right, because they're very accurate with that.
I just go with it, Lauren. I think it's good enough anyways.
Alarm can't.
You still there?
More optimistic.
I am still here.
Right?
We start earlier than
I haven't heard from Scott.
If I pause, it's because I can hear myself twice, which is a little distracting.
The mic.
Yeah. You may want to mute your speaker, Lauren, because it could be that you're getting feedback from within this room.
You might want to mute your speaker in case you're getting feedback from the room.
The mic is muted.
Now your mic is muted. Within the settings under the Zoom meeting, you can mute just the incoming sound as well as the outgoing sound. So you just need to maybe mute the incoming sound on your computer speakers where you're using headphones.
Okay.
We can't do it on our end.
I'm just trying to find that mute.
Lauren, is it just you joining us tonight too, or is Ryan joining us?
It is just me. I let him have the evening.
That's nice. Okay. Well, we're really lucky that it's just you.
Are you guys good with picking up Lauren? You're okay with that, eh? All right, we're gonna start off then. I heard from Scott, so we gave him a lot of time to be here, so if he shows up, he shows up, and if not, we'll just record. Kelsey.
This meeting is being recorded.
We're good to go. All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6:05 PM, Wednesday, July 29th, 2026, and we'll follow the session of West Central Regional Municipality Audit Committee to order. For the evening committee, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Nothing. Very good, fine. We are in Mi'kmaq, and session on cedar territory of the Mi'kmaq people. These lands are governed by the treaties of peace and friendship, signed in 1726. We all have responsibilities to each other in this land. Los Angeles Regional Municipality also recognizes that African Nova Scotians are distinct peoples whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of the Mi'kmaq, known as Nova Scotia, for over 400 years. The agenda was circulated to all committee members. If there is anything any committee member wishes to add at this point, we can take it now. Anything to be released? No, folks, we will approve the agenda as circulated in that situation. Minutes were distributed as well with the package from June 17th. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes from any member? Okay, not seeing anything, so those will be approved, circulated as well. We do a presentation this evening from BDO. We have Lauren Vale with us on the audit plan presentation. Welcome, Lauren.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Really, I think just start out to thank you all for appointing us as your auditors. I know we've got a bit of a tight timeline to turn this around, but we have a really strong audit plan that we're going to present to you today, and audit work has already kind of commenced.
Keep cutting out, or is it?
I'm just going to make sure that I'm sharing my screen. Are you all able to see this?
Yeah, we can see it there, Lauren.
Okay, perfect. I think Carly also circulated a PDF copy the other day. So the presentation, I'm just going to take you through highlights of our key audit issues and the identified risks for the municipality. As of right now, we don't have any significant internal control deficiencies to report because we haven't gotten to that stage of the audit. But when we meet again at the conclusion, if we have anything, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the results of the audit and we reconfirm our independence. So your dedicated BDO audit team, first off, you have myself, Lauren Vale. I'm an engagement partner specializing in the public sector and municipalities. Our engagement manager is Nicole. Nicole also has a lot of experience in the public sector and with municipalities. And finally, Ryan DeGoyer is our senior accountant. Ryan has been working with Carly over the last couple of weeks to get the audit kicked off. Ryan will be handling all of the day-to-day execution and management of the team. And just to confirm that we have complied with all of the relevant ethical requirements that we are required to do as auditors, and we're not aware of any independence issues with the municipality. So really, what are our responsibilities? Our objective is going to be to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. This means that we have certain financial responsibilities. So plan and perform the audit using risk assessment and materiality. Evaluate evidence for significant balances, disclosures, as per the presentation, and then report our opinion and communicate significant findings to the audit committee. We also have responsibilities related to fraud. So we will identify and assess fraud risks, including management of audit control, make sure that we maintain professional skepticism and design procedures responsive to fraud risks, and communicate any identified or suspected fraud matters as required. So if we find anything suspicious, we would communicate it to you. Then management is responsible for the corporation, internal controls, and fraud prevention protection. The audit provides a reasonable and absolute assurance. So for the audit at a glance, our materiality is based on 2.5% of budgeted revenue. So we have set a preliminary number of $900,000. We then have a performance materiality of $720,000. Performance materiality is the number that we use for any testing. So our sampling methodology relies on performance materiality. And then a trivial threshold, this is 5% of overall materiality. This is used to ensure that any errors above this 45,000 that we were to identify, if they're not adjusted by management, they would be brought to you to be identified as unadjusted. So materiality in an audit means the size or nature of the error that could influence decisions made by users of the financial statements. Typically, we can go as high as 3% of budgeted revenue, but we have stuck to 2.5% just because this is a first year audit. We tend to take a little bit of a haircut in the first year because we are new to you, you are new to us. So it's just prudent. And then likely going forward, we would use a 3% revenue going forward. Our audit approach, we plan to take a combined approach with control testing relied upon where possible. So when the team comes out in a few weeks in person to do audit execution, one of the things they're going to be looking at is the control environment and doing walkthroughs of various controls of the organization, making sure they're operating effectively and being able to test those. It results in a much more efficient audit, also a more practical audit because it's making sure that your control environment is appropriate given the size of your finance team. And like I say, so for that control environment, controls relevant to the audit will be tested. So for audit timeline, audit planning has already commenced. And here we are tonight presenting the audit planning communication. Final audit fieldwork is expected to commence August 17th. So we'll have the planning wrapped up by then and go to September 4th. We then plan to have a clearance meeting with management and BDO the week of September 14th, and then present the final communication to the audit committee the week of September 21st, and then release the audit report before September 30th, which is your deadline. I want to pause here. Are there any questions or anything like that? I'm not hearing any, but I also can't see any of you. I think you're muted.
Lauren, I didn't quite catch when you went over materiality, the.
Oh, yes, of course.
Could you just review that again, please?
Sorry, I missed a bit of that question.
I was just wondering if you could go over the numbers, the materiality numbers, the 900,000, the 720,000 and the 45. Again, I missed that.
Oh, of course. So materiality is our benchmark for overall errors. So essentially, we set that, the firms, we all have an auditor guidelines. So for us, we can use up to 3% of revenue. So we use 2.5% of budgeted revenue to initially set our threshold. Just because 2.5%, because this is a first year audit, we are new to the municipality. Typically in later years, we'll go up to the full 3%. So with that 900,000, if all of the errors we were to find in our audit were to exceed $900,000, we wouldn't be able to provide a clean audit opinion. We'd have to provide a qualified audit opinion. And so if that were to occur, we would then work with management to make those adjustments to prevent a qualification from occurring. So that's kind of what that number means. A performance materiality is then an internal benchmark that we use as auditors. Usually it's 80% of overall materiality. It's a bit of a haircut that we use for our sampling methodology. So it helps us figure out how many samples we need to find and use in our testing when we're taking a sampling approach. And then trivial, that is 5% of the overall materiality. So anything below 45,000, if we were to find an error below that, we would say that's trivial and we don't report on it and we don't investigate it. Anything above $45,000, we would track to get up to that $900,000 threshold. And we would bring that to management at the management clearance to say, we have found these errors. We want to talk about them with you. We've investigated them. Do you want to adjust these, or are we going to report them to the audit committee to say, we've totaled all of these errors. They're not material, but management has chosen not to adjust them for whatever reason, and we would give the reason. So that's really the breakdown of that. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, committee? Right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lauren. Just wanted to make reference in the, I guess it was perhaps the previous slide where, if I get this right, it's underneath the auditor's responsibilities at the bottom. You made reference there to management's responsibility for preparation, internal controls, and fraud prevention. And you had that overlaid on management. Previously, the in an audit committee meeting here, some of that fraud prevention had been overlaid even on the committee itself. And the comment that was made was that committee doesn't see the financial details in sufficient detail to be able to take on that kind of responsibility. I'm just curious what that stance is with BDO, if that's standard or if it's something unique to the audit firms.
Yeah, so definitely, and it's within the audit report language. So in a standard audit report that we would issue, essentially, at the end of the day, fraud prevention and detection is the responsibility of management to actually make sure that there are proper policies in place and controls in place to monitor that. Really, the responsibility of those charged with governance is to make sure that those policies exist and are being monitored by management. That is really your role as an oversight body, is to make sure that these things that management should have actually exist and are being monitored. So typically it would be making sure that you do have strong internal controls in place and making sure that you're aware of that and making sure that management is monitoring them. And so that is really how the responsibility flows up. So when we talk about that, making sure, what are your internal control policies, and have you as an audit committee, have you seen them and do you kind of understand what your financial controls are? But it's not really your responsibility to oversee them on a day-to-day basis, but to make sure that management's following them and that they report to you any issues of non-compliance, And then us as auditors, we do the same. We will look at the internal controls. Anything we consider relevant to the audit, we'll do testing on. And then as well, if we found any issues, we would report it up to you so that you would be aware that we found these issues.
It's great. Thank you very much. That adds a lot of clarity to the previous conversations that I guess tuned in on and so on. So thanks very much for that. That's great.
You're welcome.
All right, we're not seeing any more lights around this table, Lauren. We'll continue on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. We'll continue. I will reshare. And thanks so much for dealing with the tech problems and the I will be in person for the September meeting, but I'm on vacation in rural New Brunswick visiting my family. So really appreciate the accommodation here this evening. So just to continue on, where were we? So the schedule. So for audit risks, we have 6 main risks. So these are the key areas of focus that we will have throughout the audit. So first is management over out of control. This kind of harkens back to just the previous discussion we had about management kind of being responsible for the controls of the organization. And so this is a mandatory fraud risk in any audit that is performed. And what this means is really when we're looking at internal controls, understanding what they are and who's responsible for performing the control aspect, because management is in a unique position to always be able to override the controls because they're the ones who monitor them, are responsible for them. So making sure that they're actually following their controls. So that is a significant risk in any audit that you'll find. Next one is tangible capital assets. And so in any municipal organization, the tangible capital assets are the largest asset on your balance sheet. They're complex because they're really componentized. We're looking at roads, sewers, waterworks. Have these all been captured and appropriately capitalized? What is their useful life? And are they being broken down sort of correctly? You know, in a lot of municipalities, the way that the balance budgeting works and the capital budgeting, a lot of times these sort of get tracked sort of separately. And so making sure that everything gets capitalized appropriately. We also have the recognition of your taxation revenue. So when I talk about this, what I mean is making sure that the taxation revenue is recognized appropriately in the year. Now, Nova Scotia is unique. Every province is a little bit different in how they manage their taxation revenue, but Nova Scotia is unique in that, you know, you have a third party that comes and gives you your assessment values and you set your mill rates for that. But you have discretion on adjustments to taxation revenue. So if somebody challenges their assessment value or you make adjustments to their taxation bill. So really we focus a lot of our testing on that because otherwise it's pretty cut and dry. We get the reports from your third party, we apply your mill rates. Typically it works, but making sure that if there are adjustments in the year, are those being monitored and recorded appropriately. Recognition of government transfers. So this is always a really big one because municipalities do rely on other tiers of government for a lot of funding and capital projects. Public sector accounting standards has a lot of different rules depending on the stipulations and obligations in any government transfers being received. So making sure that those are recorded appropriately is always a significant risk in any municipal audit. Making sure that if they are, you know, restricted for certain use, that really they're being recognized appropriately under the standard. Long-term debt, just making sure that all the long-term debt is being recorded and captured appropriately is a risk, and because it is such a large balance typically on the balance sheet, it is something that we're always looking to confirm with the province and any other lenders if they exist, and making sure that the debt is complete and recorded appropriately. And finally, the consolidation process. So the financial statements of any municipality can be very complex, especially when we get into having utilities and different organizations filtering in. And so making sure that all of your schedules are appropriate or capturing everything. So far I've been really pleased with West Hants and their consolidation process internally. It's quite clear, which is great, but it is something that always provides a little bit extra risk in a municipal organization, just due to all of the different funds and the transferring between them. Are there any questions on the risks?
Questions made. Lauren, in the area of tangible capital assets, would you look at issues such as deferred maintenance and whether that could possibly be a future risk?
With deferred maintenance, we're not really looking at that as part of the tangible capital assets. No, we would be looking at that more when looking at your reserve funds and discussing that with the management. But really, that's more of a reserve perspective. Are you deferring maintenance because of lack of reserves, but not really sort of an audit issue?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee. We'll continue on, Lauren.
All right, thank you so much. So I do also just want to highlight that we do have the water utility. And so the water utility does require its own sort of set of financial statements for the water utility board. So we do have a lower materiality for the water utility, and we do sort of procedures to a lower level just to make sure that that set of statements we haven't missed anything, because we are providing sort of a different framework and a separate audit opinion on those. So with the West Hants water utility, this has a materiality of 115,000 based on 2.5% of water utility revenues. And there will be focused mostly on the capital assets, the accuracy of the cash, and then the recognition of the water sales and making sure that that's appropriate. That's it for the formal kind of actual audit itself. I do just want to also highlight a big change that's coming down the pipeline. So this is going to be in effect for the 2027 financial statements. So something that we're going to have to be working with the finance team as pretty much as probably as soon as the audit's wrapped up, a couple of months later, we will be starting into planning for the 2027 year end. So with our compressed timeline, they don't get much of a break from us over the next 12 months. We're starting our relationship off hopefully strong, but definitely with a constant presence. So starting next year, PSAS has introduced a new financial standard called PS 1202 presentation of financial statements. And this is going to really change the look and feel of the financial statements going forward. So, and it's going to also mean that it's going to have to be retrospectively applied for your comparative period. So this new reporting model is being implemented to better support the preparation of understandable financial statements. So if any of you, have ever worked in industry or run businesses of your own, you'll know that typically a balance sheet balances, and PSAS has always been different in that it doesn't. It totals up to your accumulated surplus. So finally, PSAS is kind of getting on board with the private sector and is going to be significantly restructuring its statement of financial position going forward. We're going to have a new statement called the Statement of Net Financial Assets. We're going to be getting rid of the Statement of Change in Net Financial Assets. We're going to have a new statement. And then we're also going to be restructuring the cash flow statement. And you're now going to have new budgeting requirements to be disclosed. So as we look at that, the statement of net financial assets is going to illustrate the assets available to meet future financial liabilities or additional financial assets required to settle liabilities incurred. So kind of going back to that reserve discussion, it's going to help see what your reserves are. Statement of net, then on your new statement, the liabilities will not be split between financial and non-financial And we're going to have a new third component called accumulated other. And then amended budgets can also now be used to be disclosed. So if for whatever reason the organization has to amend their budget partway through the year for a change, you'd be able to actually use your amended budget instead of your initial budget. So it's going to be different. We're going to have some changes. And BDO, we have a large public sector presence across the country. So our national public sector team is working on some, I would say, templated statements for us to be able to use, which will help us a lot. But it is going to be different. The statements are going to look and feel a lot different going forward. So that's really it from a planning perspective. And a little bit about us and a little bit about me. And so again, thank you for taking the time, and appreciate that, you have appointed a new auditor. And so again, thank you so much for that. Are there any other questions or discussion?
Are there any final questions to Lauren today? Yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Lauren, this may not apply this year. I think it's probably more for next year. But I was in a meeting recently and heard that there was a change to IFRS 9, and it's around derecognition of liabilities paid by check. You cannot do that until the checks are cleared. I know this sounds like a stupid technical thing, but it's also a bit of a nightmare from a process perspective. I'm just wondering if that comes into play this year, or is it more for next year's statements?
Yeah, so that won't impact the municipality at all. So that is for IFRS, and the municipality reports under public sector accounting standards, which thankfully have not adopted that change. So shouldn't be an issue. I do deal in IFRS as well. And yes, it is a very frustrating new change that actually I think if municipalities had to adopt would have widespread effects. So I stood on a couple of committees for the public sector accounting standards, and there is no plan to bring in a similar criteria right now, which I'm very happy about. I think we would all raise our pitchforks if that were to happen.
So are you saying that we do not report under IFRS and PSAB? It's just PSAB?
It's just PSAB, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lauren, for the information. I just wanted to take you back to your reference on the water utility, which seems to be an area that I've been swimming in lately.
Hopefully not literally.
No, they wouldn't let me do that as much as I wanted to get down there and see what was going on, with the pipes. They would only show me where the pipes were and wouldn't give me the key. So they did open it up. Yeah. Mark was witnessing it to make sure I didn't jump in. So the comment you had made on recognition of water sales. So within water, there, base rates that we have. There's the consumption, and then there's bulk water. So there's the three different types that we have for revenue that comes in. But I guess it goes to your comment about recognition. And the utilities are a bit unique in that, they have their fiscal year that we run through, but we have different periods when you read the meters and when the billing goes out. And so questions have been asked about that before. And is that what you mean by recognition as to whether we get into accruing revenue that's been read but not billed? So what might be called unbilled water. Is that what you're talking about as it relates to water sales and its recognition as part of the audit?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. So making sure that we're using a consistent approach, and that water sales are recognized sort of as earned and not necessarily when billed, and making sure that that's accounted for correctly.
So that would be through an accrual process, and I'm not an accountant. I only know the buzzwords. That's a good buzzword to know, and yes, it would be through an accrual process. Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions, committee? All right. Anything further on your end, Lauren?
Nothing further for me. Happy to have the plan presented to you all, and we'll be back in a couple of months.
Perfect. Enjoy your vacation. We're jealous.
Thank you.
right.
It's been very nice weather. I can't complain. And enjoy your August break before we reconvene in September. And yeah, have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, committee. Next on the agenda is review of terms of reference. Again, it was circulated in your packages there. Terms of reference covers many things, goals of the committee, deliverables of the committee. We won't go through them all. We've all had a chance to review those. Were there any questions on terms of reference or anything that stood out or any discussion on them at this point? Councillor Ivy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll just jump in quickly to kind of, I guess, trigger that. So the terms of reference that we have here are not the same terms of reference that we have within the meeting and committee procedural policy. We've got, I guess, like 5 pages here, and what we have in the meeting and committee procedural is only a couple. So what's the distinction between what we have here and that, because they're different? And so I believe a reconciliation probably needs to take place, like on the number of councillors and the number of members of the public, and there may be other things. So I wasn't sure in preparing for today how much to dig into this to bring notes and changes, or whether we talk about it and we revisit it at the next meeting, whatever makes sense for collectively us as a group. But can I ask through you, Mayor, to the director, what the expectation is, what we do with this?
Yeah, definitely. So prior to committee and procedural policy changes, the audit committee and a number of other committees had a separate policy. So the policy piece was absorbed as an appendix into the committee and procedural policy, but the committee still had its terms of reference that, of course, we've been reviewing here. So what's before you is the approved terms of reference. This has been reviewed by the committee a few times since it's been originally signed with no changes. However, we have had significant changes as of this year with the additional members. So that section in particular, the member and composition section, definitely needs to be updated. So we will be bringing that back for approval of the committee. But if there's any additional feedback tonight before we bring that to the committee for updates, we can, of course, include that in here.
Thank you. So I wasn't sure about what that intent was in the agenda on that. So I don't, aside from the numbers of members of the committee, I may also think I have in mind that members appointed by the council serve on the committee for 1 year. I think it's been going longer than that. It seems to me there's probably been a couple of years. Whether that makes sense, I don't know that there's greater value in having people serve more than 1 year so they know what's going on with it, to be around for extra, or whether it's better that it is shorter so it's not so, I don't know.
So that's to keep in compliance with the Municipal Government Act and FRAM, because we have to reappoint every year. So if a member didn't want to sit on the committee next year, and that has typically happened in November at a council meeting, they could say, I'm taking my name out. But they're eligible to redo for at least 2, and the maximum is 2 because it allows for other members of council to join the committee. And typically we would also ask that we don't lose all of our members because continuity between sessions. So usually before it was like 1 citizen member and 1 councillor would come off, and then we would have another councillor and citizen member come on. So we would, again, probably update this to kind of say that 3 members come off, 3 members go on. Ours, 1 member comes off of citizen members, 2 members, like we can work that out on how we want to do that. But the preference is we have to follow the MGA, so we have to do a reappointment every year. But we also have to allow other people to sit on the committee.
Good. Sorry, thank you. And so that may be where the committee procedural policy may have overridden what was identified in the terms, because I'm pretty sure that we haven't been doing it on an annual basis. And I'm not advocating one way or the other here. I'm just saying that there's an inconsistency that we probably want to be conscious of. I agree that cycling people in and out, that you don't want to be doing everybody in a year. You need to have that history of people here that know what took place in the prior 12 months and so on. So whatever works out to be on that. But that's all I have on this at the present time. Others may have other things. Thank you.
Any other comments? Lovely.
Just with respect to deliverables and the relationship with external auditors, given the debate we had at the last meeting, just wondering whether the responsibility to recommend the appointment of the municipal auditor as to whether the involvement of the audit committee in that process is something that is going to be reviewed, should be reviewed, whatever.
Yeah, so I believe, as we kind of looked at our, MGA and the FRAM framework, there's nothing in there that states that, the committee is part of the RFP process. Now, as our CAO had stated at the last committee meeting, we do follow our procurement policy. So that is where we would prepare reports, make recommendations. So the audit committee is an advisory committee to council, and you are to be basically the first eyes on that recommendation to ensure that it meets the requirements, and you would have to review that relationship annually. So within this terms of reference, you'll note that in the last paragraph that you referenced within the relationship with external auditor, it's to review the auditor's performance at least annually, including reviews of all relationships, engagements. And again, that's where I mentioned in the last meeting as well, that annually you'll be reviewing the independence, annually you'll be reviewing their performance. Like that is something that we will constantly be going over every single time. So it's not just an RFP one and done. You're going to have to do that every single year. That is part of your responsibility with your relationship with the audit committee, but not necessarily RFP selection. If that answers your question, you're the governance advisory
Well,
to governance.
you've answered the question. My going back to the discussion we had the other time, recommending the appointment of the auditor, basically by rubber stamping staff's recommendation, that seems to water down this whole recommendation process for the audit committee, because they're really usually a basic recommendation on a little more than somebody else's work.
And this is typical process. It wouldn't necessarily just be this committee that would receive reports that way. Our climate action committee also receives recommendation reports to recommend to council as an advisory committee. Same as our planning and heritage advisory committee, and our DEI committee, accessibility committee, all of those would receive recommendation reports from staff to then review, ask questions, ensure you understand, and then make that recommendation. Now, you don't necessarily, as a committee, have to make the recommendation that staff are making, as long as you have, reasons why that recommendation is not something you want to stand by. If you make an alternative recommendation, which is why we in our reports have alternative recommendations.
Audit committee have a liability that, that they can be held responsible for the behavior of the auditors. And yet we don't seem to have much authority in the appointment.
But that's where annually we have to review the auditor's performance and make those, it's almost like a performance review of the auditors each year.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along, sort of tagging on to what Lachlan had to say, I think what I would request is that when we get to a position where an auditor has to be appointed again, it won't happen obviously for another few years, that the recommendation report go in as an in-camera report with more detail. I think I would have felt more comfortable having the amount of information that was provided to us in camera up front. I do agree with Lachlan. There is a certain responsibility, especially those of us who have designations on the committee, to make sure that we have sufficient information to be making that recommendation. I certainly understand the concept of staff has to make a recommendation, it comes to us and we pass it and then it goes to council's information report. Totally support that as well. I just think that there's a middle ground here. And perhaps that middle ground in the future is not only for, every 3 years when we're doing the RFP. Clearly that has to go in camera, because that's part of the MGA, but I think maybe when we do the annual performance review, that should also go in camera. Just so that we can speak more frankly and, not betray any confidences or any confidentiality issues.
Perfect. Your comments, Councillor Ganesh?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. We tossed this around a lot at the last meeting, and I think, the comparison with the climate change recommendation that the climate change committee makes, etc., all that was very, very helpful, but it also exposes the key difference between the committees, and that there's a lot more liability connected to this committee than to decisions made by the climate change committee, in my opinion. And so I'm just wondering if even a little bit of change or an adjustment in the language would help sort of mitigate or reduce the anxiety that's in the room about the liability of this committee.
That's great comment. I'm gonna share the same concern. I do see the audit committee's role as not that it's more important, but it encompasses something that's, well, it's incredibly important to the functioning of the municipality. The finances are the municipality. The committee would have us, let us go back and have a good discussion on all the comments that have been made here tonight and see how we can incorporate it into what we present back to committee. And hopefully we can come up with something that makes everybody more comfortable and maybe a little bit more involved within that process. So let's come up with something. Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, I agree with the comments, and I'll kind of jump to the back end of that, where we end up providing an evaluation of performance assessment on the auditors, but we won't see the auditors again until the presentation of the final results, at which point in time we've got really limited information to be able to do a performance assessment on what they did. We didn't have input at this point in time on what we'd look to see within the audited statements. The plan review was done and drafted without input from the audit committee. I've spoken at council about on the likes of the water and sewer utility that we really should be seeing a breakout of base consumption and so forth, and even expenses associated with those two. We call them utilities, only one is, but so for lack of me saying it every time, we'll just call it sewer utility, even though it's just an operation within. But those are two significant areas representing about $8 million, or 20% of the value of the business of the West Hampton municipality, net of its total value. So there's things like that that I think come into play with this. And so I'm looking as well at the decision for the recommendation of BDO, which came through and passed through, although no wrinkle that got through. That's a very positive thing. But we don't know what they committed to doing in their proposal. Again, going to being able to judge what they do and how they do it. We have nothing to benchmark against them except for what we've heard and seen in this room now and in a month and a half's time. We should know what they committed to do as part of the audit as well. And that's where I think we talked previously that we should have a better sense as to what that was. Whether that's in camera, they may be making commitments as part of their work that's, it's not intended or whatever. But I'm just saying that there's, I think, a fair bit to be said for what's being commented on here. Thank you.
Just one final comment, if I could. The responsibility to review the auditor's performance at least annually is a useful provision, but if that review comes after the incident has occurred, it's really not going to be of much value. So I would just point that out, that doesn't necessarily solve the concern that these guys have. Thank you.
Dr. Rashawn.
No, that sounds good. So what they've agreed to do is within the RFP. So that would be their scope of work, and that basically to produce statements that we had requested. I can definitely share that with the committee. But there's not a lot when it comes to audit planning that is, unless there's something very different about an entity that requires a lot of variance in audit planning. Auditors have to follow the CAS or the Canadian auditing standards. So there's very much, it outlines what they have to do, how they have to do it, how they have to record it. Some of the things, some of the calculations might necessarily be different depending on the entity, but the actual process of audit planning is pretty guided by those Canadian auditing standards.
Councillor Ivey,
Yeah, so my final comment, just to be clear, is that when we get to consolidated statements, even with the utility broken out and so forth, that consolidation rolls the numbers up, and yes, there's a chart or a table at the back that you can go to break them out. But for a committee to be able to look at and with confidence say that we can see everything that's going on here, it lines up with what we know from reviewing financials throughout the year. There's some areas there, which I've just already referenced, I won't restate them, at least as it relates to water, that just allows it to line up and we're done. I think it would be a cleaner, quicker process if we had some of those things incorporated, what it's worth. A little bit off topic with where we're at on this, but I just make that point.
very good, all great comments. Right, so looking for other lights, seeing nothing. All right, folks, anything further on your end, Director?
No, I think I captured, so of course we have the changes to the member composition, and then we'll look at some verbiage within, and I kind of went through and I highlighted probably under section 7.2, we'll add a little bit in there regarding the other comments that were mentioned.
On the agenda is financial update, March 31st, 2026. Director Sean.
Good. So this was circulated within your package, and I did receive some comments back, so I do appreciate those. So I went in and I did some additional work today to kind of, again, hopefully allow for some ease in interpretation, and also just correct a few of the variance formulas. So with that, we are close to our year end. So what I'd like to highlight first, before we get into the report details, is anything that in the far forecast column that is considered red, we're still working on finalizing those numbers. So from what we have in here based on projections, there's still some work being done within the areas of administration, as well as the transfers to and from reserves. So those numbers are still being worked on right now. Any of the numbers that have been highlighted in a brown color are over budget, but are explainable and or have been investigated. So those ones I can speak to directly tonight. So going into our actual financial report, we are now looking at March 31st. So we're pretty much at 100% of our year. Our revenues are projected about 3.9% above budget, while our expenses are projecting about 2.8 above budget. And since our previous reporting period, we're at 0 or less than a change of 1% of 0.9. So the actual forecast hasn't changed and the predictions haven't changed that much since our previous reporting period. In comparison to March 31st, 2025, our revenues in 2026 are 0.3% lower, while our expenses are 3.5% higher.
Excuse me,
Not
just which table are you referring? Are you using this or are you using the significant?
I'm just reviewing the report now, but
Sorry,
yeah.
I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So just in the report, we're talking about the in comparison to the previous year of March 31st, 2025. So revenues are 0.3% lower, and while expenses are 3.5% higher. I'm going to just put a little asterisk beside that, because though our expenses are 3.5% higher, we also have our J-class roads in there because they're not an owned asset of ours. So we support that program to do work on the provincial roads and cost sharing method. So that actually runs through our transportation budget line, and they were billing us for not this year's, but last year's. So that is showing up in that transportation line, which is it's just over 400,000. So that definitely is adding to that 3.5% in variance that you're seeing there, which is why we've seen that such a jump in comparison to our February report, when we were actually pretty close to our February report of 2025. The other thing I will say that is so just reviewing a lot of these numbers now, we have kind of solidified. So sewer revenue is higher than budget. This is consistent with some of the data that we got on the water utility side as well. Sales of services are above, and that's just due to increase in program participation and higher community center rental revenue, which is really great to see. And that is higher a little bit too, because again, the community center and some of our other facilities are not open all the time, so that's really great to see. Then we have services provided to other local governments. So this is higher due to our host tipping fees, which you can see within the detailed report as well. I'm just going over the summary. But also our new revenue stream, which is circular materials. So this year, this shows just the 1 quarter usage of the circular materials contract. Our D-transfer tax, as I mentioned in our previous report, is higher, and this is due to sales between September and November. So that is definitely seeing significant work. Transfers from other local governments are above as well, and this is mainly just due to additional grant revenue that was received. And other revenue is above as well, and this is largely due to an increase in interest and penalties on outstanding balances, which we also talked about in our previous report. And then our grants in lieu of funding is also a little bit higher, and that's just due to property assessment growth and of course more properties becoming grant in lieu eligible. Then we have our expenditures, which includes our environmental health services. So that expenditure is above a budget just due to higher costs of sewer operations, administration, and waste collection. Of course, we note that we have the change in the waste collection contract, so that's some of that. But then we also have changes within the sewer bylaw, so that has increased some of the costs associated to the sewer operation as well. Net transfers are above budget, primarily due to reassessments of the asset retirement obligation and the increase in the partially offset the lower use of housing accelerator fund and the home flood protection program. So we had anticipated we would utilize more of that, and those are based on actual costs being expensed out. So we had less home flood protection expenses going out the door, less expenses associated to the housing accelerator fund. So we didn't transfer as much in as we were anticipating from our reserve. Transportation expenditures, as I mentioned, are higher, and that's due to those J-class roads, about 400,000. But they're also offset by a transfer from the reserve, because those are paid out of the consolidation reserve. So those have a transfer that's coming in on the revenue side. Planning expenditures are below budget due to staffing changes and lower spending in the climate action initiatives. And that is again linked to that home flood protection program and the climate action work plan. So we didn't spend as much in those. So we also didn't transfer as much from those as well. So those two fields are linked. So overall, we're projecting an overall surplus right now of 398,281. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Director Rashawn. Councilor Riley, you had your light number.
That's from before.
Okay. Back to you, Vicky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just have one quick question with J-class roads, near and dear. You're saying that they're offset from a transfer from reserve. So is that the entirety of the cost, or is that just the municipalities section of the cost?
So
Or cost share?
the transfer from reserves, as well as the amount that we had within the transportation line, are municipal costs, not the province's cost.
Okay, very well. And what reserve did you say it was coming from?
So we have a consolidation reserve, from when we consolidated through the town of Windsor and the municipality of West Ham. So we have been utilizing that for our rural, J-class roads.
Okay, so it's like a capital type reserve?
Yes, it's a special reserve. It is
Is
restricted.
it like restricted? Is it restricted to what it could be used for by council?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Whedon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, through you to Director Rashawn. Just looking at the first line item there, the taxes were almost $500,000 off the budget. Is that uncollected or unbilled, or what's driving that number?
Certainly. So a lot of the times that's due to assessment changes. So we do a small estimate for assessment changes throughout the year. So, I can tell you that we had 2 significant assessment changes. I can't speak to the personal information of those accounts, but we did have 2 accounts that were, significant in nature of their assessment as well as their adjustment too. So that was one piece. The other piece is just other adjustments that happen throughout the year as per PBSC. So the only adjustments that we do on our end are fire or natural disaster related. So those would be the only adjustments that we are able to do without having PBSC's backup. So it's just literally mostly changes in assessment.
Okay, so that would have been people who were going through appeals or to get their assessment changed, or?
Yeah, it could be appeals, it could be properties being built, it could be demolitions, things like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thank you. Could that be a redesignation of properties within one zone or another? Moving of boundaries for taxation purposes?
No,
No?
no, are you thinking of the, yeah, that's this here. And that would, and that would show under the special tax agreement line.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much. The one thing I will ask, and I sent a note just to try and understand that, and since Councillor Whedon had brought up the taxes and the 2 are right, one on top of the other. So on the main detailed sheet, my experience had always been that if you were under on something, that we'd be seeing brackets around the taxation items. So leading down that column to the 47 that we're short on achieving revenue, that's where you see it. And when you're ahead on something that we would, so the sewer below where we are ahead of the target, we're showing brackets around, which to me would, it indicates on the quick look that that's probably where we, but it's the opposite. Can you just guide me on that? Because there's something that I'm missing in understanding the use of the brackets between just those 2 categories, and that takes care of everything for me.
Yeah, so that remaining funds column is basically budget minus year to date. So that's why you're generating the brackets, because it's based on that. You had more revenue actuals, but less budget, it's gonna generate those brackets. So we can flip the formula from year to date to minus budget, which would give us that positive number, and the negatives on the other ones. It's just we would only be able to utilize that for half the report, which is okay. We can move that forward.
So, well, I don't want it to be because of me and my thinking, like I don't want to do that. But so if my thinking isn't in line, that's okay. I don't want you to do that for that purpose. If it's the right thing to do, then sure. But I know that, for revenues and expense, 2 different calculations because of the way they work for the variance analysis, but
Yeah, no, that's great. And honestly, it's always good to make sure that the reports are able to be interpreted. And if that, again, those suggestions are very helpful because it just means that we can improve the information coming out. Typically these reports aren't circulated except for more than 4 times a year to this committee. So it's more the council related reports, which is where we focus on that forecast minus a budget minus forecast. Yeah.
thank you. It's appreciated.
Vicky.
Thank you. So just sort of tagging on Councillor Whedon's question, do you track what the successful appeal percentage is of assessed value or taxable?
Yes. We don't have a lot of appeals, and recently we actually had appeals that have covered multiple periods as well. I'm not sure if you guys have experienced that in your world recently. But, yeah, so, we don't really have a lot of appeals that come through. Really ours is big on just assessment changes that happen, that we get on a weekly basis from PBS.
Okay, the reason why I ask is because I'm wondering if this is in line with what other municipalities are experiencing when it comes to successful appeals, either in year or prior year, but this would be in year only, because it's in year only that affect the tax revenue. Prior year would go against your valuation allowance. So I'm just wondering if that is in line with what you're seeing from other municipalities. That's all.
Yeah, I think PBSC provides a report on all of that, on just the number of appeals by municipality. Typically, we don't tend to have a lot of appeals that make it to, the tribunal phase, but, for the most part, people will accept and they go from there. So I wouldn't be able to tell you a percentage rate off my head, but I know we don't get a lot of it.
I'll tell you, we're going for your life.
Oh, I'm just, it was just a process, just a presentation question I had, and it's not, but I was looking at, you mentioned that.
They took your light on there, sorry.
Oh,
Here.
You mentioned that if it's a number is in red, we're still working at it. And I'm looking at services provided to other government agencies, and I'm just noting that the forecast is not the same as the year to date, and but it's seems to be more than the red number. So is that just is that just something that'll clean up, or is there a reason?
Yeah, that's one of the areas where we're looking at, still investigating. So you'll note there that, we have some, administration revenue, so that's one line. And then we'll have the courthouse revenue. So both of those are still kind of being reviewed. The actual journal entry for the courthouse has been determined, which is why I have highlighted it in red. So it's a pending journal entry versus something that's still being investigated. But yes, there's still a few things that we're reviewing as part of our final trial balance.
Thank you.
Further questions? That's right.
Yeah, just on that courthouse one, and memory's telling me that maybe that came up at the last meeting. Is that negative revenue that we're seeing in?
Yeah, so that's actually showing that we have negative revenue, right now, and that's due to an accrual for an accounts receivable. So, it reversed as of April 1st. And so we're looking to see where that, invoice was, and then ensure that that is captured, because we set up basically an invoice or a revenue at the year end based on the total expenses of the courthouse, because the Department of Justice is responsible for 100%. So if they only send us such and such an amount, but we spent this amount, they'll pay the difference. So we invoice them every year. So that's just that piece, just to see where that one.
So ideally it'll clear before, so the negative.
That's what I mean, like there's a journal entry set there, so that negative is gonna go away.
Oh, thank
you.
All right, committee, not seeing any more lights on financial updates. All right, move on, Director Rashawn, we do have correspondence, we have under utility matters there, that these piece of correspondence was circulated in your package committee. I know the director had a report coming back at our next meeting. No, nothing coming back from you on those at all. All right, so if there's any direction from committee based on those pieces of correspondence, we can take it now, or if there's questions from committee. Lachlan.
I only got this yesterday, and I just was, be honest, haven't really even edited this presentation, but it seems to be an elaborate issue with the individual involved. And he did reference that some issues were brought up with our previous auditors and they considered them insignificant or immaterial. And by, just by, I don't know, accident or what, but our auditor did mention with the water utility that water recognition revenues is an issue, which seems to be what this is all about. Is this something we might broach with our new auditors as well?
Yes, of course. And I will say that it's not that it's an issue, it's just that it's a risk. Anytime revenue reporting, it's always a risk. So that's always a high risk for auditing. So again, not that she's saying that it is a risk, she's just saying that that is a potential area of risk. So when we look at the recognition of our revenue and what we would classify as materiality, there's always going to be a little bit of overlap between the years. So when you're looking at it strictly based on a fiscal year, it looks like this year is missing 24 days. But it has maybe 23 days of the previous reporting period. So when you net those two together, it's no longer material. Yeah, so for example, 2024, 25, I think is referenced in there at 24 days, and then the next year is referenced at 29 days. So there's a 5-day variance between the two. But when you net those 24 days are recorded on the July bill. So they're part of that. So it actually reduces the materiality of it because they net together.
Okay, so just for because I'm not that familiar with municipal county, but from what he said, at least what I think he said was that at March 31st, are we recognizing receivables as receivables of water bills that haven't gone out yet?
Yeah. So
And is that consistent with municipal?
Yeah, so we issue bills in April, we read in March, and those bills get posted to March. So those are part of that piece, because those do represent a period within the previous reporting. So those were earned during that 24, 25 year. We'll just use that as the.
Well, I'm just wondering the distinction between, say, a receivable and an accrual, because a lot of times when you have those stub periods, you will simply accrue revenues.
Exactly. So with the April bill, that gets posted into March. So when we're talking about the receivable and all that, that gets posted into March because it's all for that billing period. The recording of the 24 days between when the bills are read or when that specific bill, and keeping in mind that we have 6 different routes that we read on, and they all can't be read on the same exact day. So, or at the same time. So it usually takes a number of days. So again, each bill, depending on each resident, might vary depending on the number of days. So, and it's the same like Nova Scotia Power. If you've looked at your Nova Scotia Power bill, you'll see 90, 92, 93. So it's the same as the Nova Scotia Power bill. But those 24, whatever number of days is for depending on if you're looking at one specific bill, are then recorded at the time of July. But that previous year has the other amount from the other year. I know this is sounding really weird, but when you net those two together, there is a full year within the count within the fiscal year. Yeah.
What do we expect to be the disposition of Mr. Smith's representations? Or do we? It's ongoing.
I would say we've definitely had some significant interaction, meetings and providing information. For example, I recently, within the last year, provided 4 years worth of trial balance detail. So significant work with the individual. All good questions, but.
Well, I know we're not going to change our billing policy as he suggested, but.
I think what we're trying to do, committee, is we're trying to build confidence within all residents of West End. So if we can work through work through anybody's concerns, there's not a bad concern. And I think when it's all done and said, between the audits, the new auditor, this committee, the questions that are being asked around the table, citizen members, or citizens bringing in questions as they come up or as they see of an interest to them. I think it's all helpful to help us all build confidence within the municipal financial statements, water utilities, sewer utility, or whatever it may be for the municipality. So this all helps and one of the main functions of this committee as well. So,
Thank you.
Nikki, what
Todd.
director did you?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Nikki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, couple of things I wanted to make note here. These are all very good points. Somebody who spent a lot of time looking into this and much appreciated. There's two things that came to mind when I was looking at this. One is certainly materiality, but the concept of consistency. So are we building these consistently, even if they're not exactly to March 31st every year? Some might be to the 25th, some might be to the 28th. Are we doing this consistently year over year?
Yes.
Okay. The other concept within sort of, accounting or financial reporting that I think of when I look at this is you have to look at how much it's going to cost you to get to that exact date. So in order, especially in this concept where you're doing meter readings at different days and so on, how much it would cost to figure out what that estimate has to be in order to make it more accurate versus what the cost is of the inaccuracy. So we know it's slightly inaccurate. It is an accrual. It goes in, it comes right back out. So we're not really reporting something incorrectly. It's just that there may be a slight variation in the year-end dates, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay, so that last bit to get from, say, March 23rd to March 31st on my bill, and then March 25th to March 31st on Lachlan's bill, and March 28th to March 31st on Councillor Ivy's bill, would cost us.
Yeah. Additional time, of course, of staff, additional availability of staff, and maybe even additional staff to do that. We have the meter, like I said, we have 6 different routes, and some of them work on different systems as well. So it's also making sure that all of those work. One of the biggest significant things and challenges is the pad readers, because those actually have to be physically gone to and tapped. So that does take a significant amount of time, which our Public Works Department has been great at trying to focus on those meters to try and get that equipment updated, but it does take a significant amount of time to go physically tap and then audit those.
And so how much do you know how much that net revenue would be between, 2025, 26 to like 26, 27, where we end up with a little bit more revenue reported in 26, 27 than we should have because it was actually 25, 26 versus so on and so forth. Do you have any idea what that nets out to?
Yeah, so it netted out, just in a quick example this time, close to, I think it was 49,000.
Okay, so that's almost trivial.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
Yeah, I guess just to add to this, and I'm aware of it from direct interactions with Mr. Rick Smith on this and so on, but in tracking the billing, it's not that we're in that same 5-day period in a year like March 25th, 28th, 30th. It's that the billing period or the reading period is slipping back 5 days per year because we're billing out based on a 90-day cycle. And if you divide the quarters equally, it's 91 and a half days, 91 and a quarter days. So over a period of 5 years, we've slipped back 25 to 30 days. So I didn't come here tonight prepared to present or to speak to that in that detail. But there's part of the challenge that's existing within some of the comments that Mr. Smith has communicated. And there's other comments there as it relates to the recent rate change and how we accrued for that last year, when in fact it wasn't necessary to accrue for it because we don't pre-bill it, but effectively it gets billed through to the end of the quarter based on timing, right? And so different organizations, different ways. Town of Windsor its monthly billed revenue per quarter, every quarter, same amount. Jan 1 to March 31, and so forth and so forth, and that was the billable period. The billable period was static, but with us, that billable period shifts based on that billing period. So, and I hope I'm not misspeaking, but feel free to correct me.
Yeah. And I have a little experience because of the overlap between the town and the municipality prior to consolidation, but those were being manually changed so that they always were those periods.
Right.
Yeah. So this is actually showing a bill period to a bill period closer to what the reads are. So, you know, you're seeing it, you're still getting billed your base at 90 days. But your actual billing time frame, if you look at your read distance, could be 93 days. So if you're looking from your reads, you could be 93 days, but your base rate's still gonna be based on 90 days.
Absolutely. But that's why that took 50% of the challenge away right away, because base rates were the same every quarter unless there was a rate change. Never changed. To the reads, because those cycle, there can be a bit of an accrual if it's significant. If it's a day or two, nobody's going to be able to calculate it based on consumption of water. Unless you're a real significant user, you're not going to see a change in a 1 or 2 day difference on the dates. So again, I didn't come prepared to present to that tonight, but it may be that this is worthy of a future conversation or a way to figure out how we do address and get action on this versus having it continue on in some fashion. I don't think what's being suggested is out of sync with it, except for a coding issue. Base, you're real easy, and then accrual periods for the other one. So revenue expense all line up.
And that I would recommend, even though we're advisory here, that's probably more of a council based. If they want me to manually change those dates and not line periods up, just so that we're showing the quarter versus what we actually built, the date we build from to the other date we build from. That's fine, we can do that, but it's, again, there's alignment that you can see from billing period to billing period, and if you're gonna change that, you're gonna have a lot of people asking, well, why is there's a gap? Because when Bill got, the last period we got billed to was this, now we're going, oh, okay, now there's 15 days in between when this is and this is, why are we not being billed for those 15 days? So, I mean, that is fine too. But again, it's gonna be more of a bigger impact on change management for the community and reading those bills. Right, where now they're already used to, okay, my last bill ended on July 15th. I know that my next bill is gonna start on July 16th. On they go.
The only thing I'll add to that, and again, I don't want to drag, I probably said too much on this already, but I think that the read periods is outside the bill period. Like, I think that's what I'm seeing on mine. I wish I brought it. And it may be on his in here, but we've got the bill period and then the reading is outside the bill period. So there's the greater risk for confusion and trying to figure out accruals, I think. So that's why I think this is perhaps a future conversation, or it can be moved to council that we find a way to try and address it. It should be pretty clean. People have been doing this forever with utilities for a long time. It's not like we want to reinvent the wheel here. So.
Yeah, the read period does show different from the bill period.
Absolutely.
I think when it's all done and said, I think the concern of this committee would be to make sure we're collecting all the revenue we should be collecting, all the base revenue because of capital expenses and future capital, et cetera. And then obviously the usage charge for our ongoing operations of sewer and water. But also, again, back to the perception of the public and users of the utility and all ratepayers, because indirect ways utilities do affect ratepayers, debt financing wise, et cetera, et cetera. So the more confidence that we can build within those bills that are going out, even though to your point, we can manually change if that's what builds more confidence. There may be a gap period there eventually, but it can all be explained. But the more confidence that we can build within that for our residents, I think going forward, it's better for the municipality as a whole. With the caveat that we are collecting the revenue that we should be collecting, because these are big items. And future-wise, flood mitigation, sewer water components to those aren't small projects. And with other levels of government financing, it seems like it's going to fall more on us as a municipality. So I think that's where we're all trying to get to, so.
And I think, just, from comments earlier, I think we kind of chatted about how that kind of works on a financial basis around 49,000. So with the other piece, of course, and I might have forgot to mention this as part of my financial update, but something else we can consider too, timing wise, is we are going through a financial system change. So, there's already going to be change management that's going to be involved in the public as part of this process, because it's going to impact them. They're going to be able to engage now online, and it'll be a little different. So it might be great timing to also kind of loop this in as part of that change management as well. So great suggestion, definitely something we've put on the thing. And I mean, sky's the limit sometimes.
Not seeing any more lights. It brings us to the section of public comment. I know we have Mr. Smith here in the public. You wanna address committee, Mr. Smith, at this point? We can do our 5 minutes and.
I will.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll bring you to the mic on my left or your right. Mark takes up a lot of space on that side, so. Those hockey days pay off.
So I originally planned to be very brief, but I will have a few extra comments in lieu of questions this evening. But first of all, good evening. My name is Rick Smith. For people around the table who don't know me, I'm a citizen of Windsor. And I have a background in accounting and have been interested and focused on procurement issues and water and sewer utilities in West Kent since prior to 2023. First, I'd like to say I'm encouraged that West Hants has appointed new auditors, BDO Canada, and trust that they'll provide excellent professional services to the municipality. Before I go on to my very brief overview, I just wanted to make a comment that when I did receive this material online, of course, I did experience difficulty with additions and so on in this part of the statement, and again, the issue of credits and brackets and so on. I just raised it because it was raised here at the table. The other issue that I didn't intend to speak to because it is in the package has to deal with procurement of audit services. I wrote that brief as well, and I must say that in looking at the audit committee terms of reference as presented in the package for tonight, it is significantly greater as mentioned in the meeting and policy procedural handbook. And so I would be concerned about getting that on board and getting that straight, because it's quite clear in this under 5.1 that the review and qualifications, independence, quality of service, performance, and fees of the auditors, and recommend the appointment of an auditor council. That all falls under the audit committee within the meeting and committee procedural policy. So just to be clear, that's where I got that. This obviously document is not, to my knowledge, isn't online. So I'm not suggesting that my position is any different as it relates to the audit committee and their role. I'm just providing a little clarity. So included in the audit package this evening are 5 briefs that I prepared back in May of this year relating to financial and operational issues with the water and sewer utilities. This is not the first time that I've raised most of these issues. And that is why I feel that each of these briefs should be reviewed in detail and actioned by the audit committee. Simply because if I submit these briefs and never get a response, then am I correct? Am I wrong? In other words, they need to be actioned in my mind. I'm not suggesting that everything that I bring forward will necessarily always be correct or always need to be actioned. But I bring these forward because I feel that there are gaps and issues that should be dealt with. So I do not intend to go into detail. However, I'd like to comment, on my concern with the water and sewer billing just briefly. Because it's my position that the bills have been sent out incorrectly on several occasions and resulted in lost revenue to the municipality. And this has happened, with the last rate change back in April 25 and with the recent rate change in 26. The base rate charges for both water and sewer were set in a rate study and approved by the UARB as a quarterly charge. The municipality, on the other hand, has been billing out the base charges on a quarterly 90-day basis. So as was mentioned previously, they're slipping back 5 days each year on that billing. So what they've been doing is they've been prorating those adjustments when the rate studies happen, when there's no need, because those base rates they're already a quarterly rate. So if they're sending out a particular bill that only goes to March 2nd, it really, that quarterly rate covers all the way to the end of March. So as a result, the April 1st, 2025 bills to clients, about 4,000 customers, were underbilled, total of about $28,000. I provided that in my package support for that information. And the reason that I provided that brief, and others, of course, in May, because there was a rate change coming up in April of 2026. And unfortunately, when the bills were sent out in July 17, 2026, underbilling happened again to the tune of about $16,000. And that lost revenue is not going to come back to the municipality. It's not a timing issue. It's an issue where the bills were simply prorated when they didn't need to be. So the municipality has lost that money. Now that may seem relatively small as it relates to materiality. I would agree based on the auditor's comments this evening. But there should be a responsibility to correct errors and to keep the billing going out correctly. So, if I'm gonna write a brief and make the point and provide all the backup information that the bills are incorrect, then someone needs to review that, determine that it is either correct or not, and advise me so I can go away and or correct it so that the municipality doesn't continue to lose more money. It's just that simple in my mind. I'm not here to find errors with everything that's done, but if my past accounting experience that steers me to these things, and I live in this community, as I've stated in the past. I was born here and came back here, and it just annoys me that the time is not taken to look at these briefs and determine whether they're right, wrong, or otherwise. So the point about the accrual that was raised isn't a minor amount. It's in the brief. It's approximately 300,000 or whatever it is at this point, because we're virtually a month off the billing cycle. And each year it continues to move 5 days off the billing cycle. As far as, and I'm simply talking in this instance, I'm talking about the base charge. Consumption really is consumption. And it can be billed at any time you choose to bill it. But the point is, at year end or critical quarters, it's very easy to calculate what that accrual is. I did the calculation in 5-10 minutes. So this is not rocket science, and there's 5 briefs there, and all I can really do is bring this information forward and hope that you read it and try to get to the bottom of it, each and every brief and each and every item, and say, does this have merit or not? So I'm tired of it, to be very honest. I mean, I've done this many times, I have a stack of them. And I'm not, I didn't come here to do this evening. That was my brief commentary. And I realized we can't interact. But as a resident who is basically trying to just help in the area of water and sewer, I get interested. And I'm still interested, but not to the extent if there's a mindset of not to make corrections and keep an open mind about how you want to run your water and sewer utility. That's simply that. And I can appreciate if you've only received my information a couple of days ago, there is a lot there to read, but I provided all the supporting documents. They're not always easy to find online. I pulled them all. I created Excel spreadsheets, and all I'm really looking for is someone to look at it and say, is this worthy of consideration? It's not always about materiality. If there's ongoing errors, we should try to correct them and move on. Errors will always be made, but when they have actually have a financial connotation to it, whether it's $25,000 or $50,000, we should be trying to correct that so we're not losing money. Some errors do not have a financial consequence. The billing one does. If you don't bill it, you lose it. So I simply leave it at that. I put a lot of time and effort into them, and I'm always open to sit down and discuss it and determine whether there's an issue with what I'm saying or not saying, or whether I've erred on something. I'm open to that totally.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Again, committee, that was circulated in the package. We recognize that it was only a couple days previous that we could send it out, but please take a read through. If you do have comments on it, we can address them at our next meeting and go from there. All right, folks. Our next meeting would be September-ish, give or take. I don't have the exact date, but as we do narrow that down, we'll send it out. And at that point, we will adjourn for this evening. Thank you so much. Sorry.
So to ensure alignment with our September 30th deadline for approval, we're going to be aiming to have our statements to the September council. So you can anticipate that we will be at minimum the week before the council meeting on the Wednesday.
First 2 weeks in September. Perfect. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Can I just,
I'm sorry, Flopper, yeah.
Just, it would be helpful if we got the document materials for the meeting of a few days earlier than what the last couple of meetings experienced.
Alright, so we'll aim to have those at least a week then.
We follow the committee meeting and procedural policy to ensure they're out typically to follow that. So if we wanted to be sooner than that, then we should probably set some sort of timelines, but because we'll be going outside of the committee meeting and procedural.
Okay, we'll take a look at that anyways. Yep.
Are we currently 2 days? Is that what it is? Or do we
Well, we send ours out on Thursday.
Thursday, Friday? Normally we're 5 days before the meeting.
Yeah.
And is that what it is for audit?
It's business days, so it's because we're Wednesday and that's Tuesday, so Friday moves to Monday, things like that, so that's why.
We should.
Let's try, because I know with council and committee hall that we have the grace of a weekend there, which gives us more time, so maybe let's try to take that into consideration as well, and add those extra couple days in. Yeah, perfect. All right, thank you.
Sorry, if I may, Mayor, I was just gonna jump on what you had said there. Like, it's very helpful to have it like with the weekend in front. I know for the council agendas, and I get it on Thursday night, I give it a quick look, and then you can really dive into it over the weekend. We only got this one on Monday. Maybe that is the policy of 2 days, but it's really not long enough, especially for the breadth, the kind of documents that we get with all the numbers that we get. Sometimes you need 2 or 3 goes at it to get through it all. So I would definitely recommend that we have at least, every weekend in there. If we go.
We all have other things to do other than just this.
And that
I'm
can,
sorry for better.
yeah, no, that can definitely be noted. We can definitely send them out, publicly, and I'll still try and follow the public package, timeline, but the, committee timeline, we can definitely try and